A trade. The Blue Jackets have made a trade. It's not the most exciting one in the world, but it is a trade. Let's talk about it on this bonus Locked On Blue Jackets.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. As is tradition, approximately 15 minutes after I finished recording the bonus episode for today, the Blue Jackets made a move, which, sure, it is not a move I was expecting. It is a move that I found confusing at first and have since kind of resigned feels like a more negative word that I want to use. But I'm like, yeah, sure, this is a trade, right? Blue Jackets have traded a 6th round pick in, I believe, the 2026 draft, so the upcoming draft next summer, for goaltender Ivan Fedotov, who is with the Flyers, or was with the Flyers. Has had kind of a rough go of things in terms of the NHL and also just kind of in life. So you might remember him as the guy that the NHL tried to bring over, and then the Russians were like, well, no, he has to join the army. He has to do his 2 years of national service or whatever it is. He said no, so they put him in jail. So even outside of the NHL, this guy's had a I would say stressful couple of years, I think. Has not had the most sparkling record in the world as in the NHL. In his career, 29 games, he has a record of 6-14-5 and has an 874 save percentage. He played 3 games in that first season, the 23-24 season, and then 26 games last season, started 24 of them. Had an 880 save percentage last season. So, like, not the most sparkling numbers, right? Like, I'm not going to sit here and say that Ivan Fedotov is, like, the next coming of whoever, right? I am enjoying the jokes about, how it went last time the Flyers traded the Blue Jackets a Russian goalie for basically nothing, but I am... it's not gonna be like that again, guys. Fedotov is probably, is my guess, a fine option as an AHL goalie, right? And that's what this is. This is the Blue Jackets wanted a third goalie that could play in the NHL, was waivers eligible, but is almost certainly going to be that third goalie that they keep in Cleveland until they absolutely need him. And that's Fedotov, right? Like, at first, again, I was very confused by the move at first because I was like, okay, well, he's 28 years old. He's making $3.2 million this season and is not great in the NHL. So I was like, are they just going to carry 3 goalies? Like, is Elvis on the move and they're hoping that this is going to be like a reclamation project? I don't know. But to me, it sure does sound like that they've got their waivers eligible goalie. Cap issue, like cap space is not an issue. Blue Jackets, like they could afford to take the whole cap. His 1 year left on his contract, and then he's a UFA. So, like, best case scenario, he works out great. They extend him. Worst case scenario, he's not good, and they let him walk at the end of the season. Right? It's one of those moves where, like, on the surface, you're like, why did they do this? And then you're like, oh, okay, no, this is kind of a nothing burger-ish move. I get why the Flyers have done it. It kind of frees up some of the log jam for them. It looks like they're going to go with Essen and Vladar as their duo. They needed the cap relief as well. I don't have the cap numbers pulled up in front of me, but I believe previous to this, they had about $300K in cap space. So now they've got, $3.5 million, which is good for them. Blue Jackets can afford to eat that entire cap hit of Fedotov. I don't believe the cap hit changes when he's in the minors, because it's a one-way contract. But again, that's not really a problem for the Blue Jackets, right? And a 6th round pick is what is a sixth round pick, right? They've got like a 3% chance of making the NHL at all. And I don't think that Fedotov is going to turn into like an NHL regular goalie, and like certainly not a starting caliber goalie, right? He probably is what he is at the minute, but I do wonder, like, he was playing behind the Flyers, who are not particularly known for like having a stalwart or competent defense. And I realized that I live in a glass house of following a team that plays defense, with air quotes around the word defense there. Like, I live in a glass house of criticizing another team's defense, but like, I do wonder if a guy, he's a guy that change of scenery, less pressure on him. I feel like he was kind of touted as this great effective guy when they brought him over. Like, again, looking at his KHL stats, like his Russian stats are incredible, right? All going all the way back to when he was drafted in 2015. But even in the 2014 15 season, he had KHL time, right? His draft year he didn't. Then the year after that, he took him a couple of years to get situated. But from 2018 on, he's got a 933 save percentage in the KHL, a 931, a 925, a 919. His final year in the KHL, which was 23-24, he had a 914 save percentage, right? Like, and then a 916 in the playoffs. His KHL numbers were excellent. Comes over, plays on the not great Philadelphia Flyers, probably could have had a little bit more of a settling in period. Maybe give him some time in the AHL. I don't know, but it didn't work out in Philly. So I think change of scenery, good. Probably a little bit less pressure on him to succeed in Columbus than in Philly, because, like, again, I feel like Danny Briere brought him over and was like, he's going to be the next guy in Philly. It's a big thing to be the next big goalie, right? It's a heavy is the head that wears the starting goalie helmet, right? But put him in, like, my thoughts on Fedotov here are: put him in Cleveland, leave him in Cleveland unless you absolutely have to, right? And this is the thing. This is a move for Cleveland. This is not an NHL move, right? He can play in the NHL, sure, if he has to, but he is very definitely the third guy in the depth chart in my mind. And also, when you look at Cleveland, going from Fedotov and Sorchenko as a duo, from Sorchenko as your starter and probably Nolan Lalonde as your backup, like, that is a big, like, that's a jump, right? Fedotov is an NHL goalie, not a sparkling one, but is an NHL goalie, right? Put him in the AHL, see what you've got with him, right? Let Nick Backstrom, Brad Thiessen do some work with him, see if you can get, like, literally anything out of him. And like I said, it's such a low risk move. I don't know that I would call it low risk, high reward, but like low risk, medium-ish reward, maybe. If you get a semi-competent AHL goalie out of Fedotov for a 6th round pick, like, I feel fine about that. Again, this is not like not a needle moving trade. It's not a game breaking trade. But it is, and frankly, I like this better than just grabbing a free agent goalie. Someone was like, someone on Twitter was, I forget who it was, so apologies if you're listening, was like, why didn't they just sign a goalie from the free agents list? And, like, again, I might be wrong about this. I think every goalie that is a free agent or a UFA, because I believe all the RFAs are re-signed now, none of them are waivers eligible. And I think that was the big thing for Don Waddell, is they wanted a third goalie that they could send down if they needed to. I'm just pulling up the UFA goalies right now if I can. I don't know that it will let me. But okay, here we go. In terms of goalies that were UFAs, like, there's not really anything in here. I'm not sitting here being like, oh, that guy or oh, that guy, right? Like there were some names that I think had some potential. They've mostly gone elsewhere, and none of them were waivers eligible. And I think that was the big thing for Waddell was they wanted a waivers eligible goalie that they can send down to Cleveland, because Jack Greaves is not waivers eligible anymore. I believe as soon as this season starts, he becomes waivers ineligible. So he's on a one-way contract, which I know doesn't mean anything about terms of sending up or sending down, but Elvis and Jet are the guys in Columbus right now, and they got their AHL goalie. So there you go, and they got it for basically nothing. The cap looks bad, but again, the Blue Jackets cap space is kind of made up. I feel like even with all of these additions, all of this everything else, they still have $15.5 million in cap space right now. And obviously, a lot of that is going to go elsewhere when extensions kick in, when you give Adam Fantilli a lot of money next summer. But although I will say that Fedotov is not on that cap, so even with the Fedotov trade, that's what 12.3, I think, 13.3 million is what they'll have. 12.3 million is what they'll have after Fedotov gets added to their cap hit. Like they've still got over $10 million in cap space even with that. So it's kind of a non-issue. I'm not going to sit here and say that I love this move. It's an incredible move. It's an amazing move, but like it is a fine move, and probably says more about me than anything else that I'm like, thank God it was this and not like Fedotov for Cheetikov in a second, because I kind of braced myself for something like that. Like maybe I'm scarred from the Charlie Coyle trade, I don't know, or the Patrick Laine trade, but this is a perfectly cromulent move. If you get something out of Fedotov, great. If you don't, you gave up nothing, and you got a potential AHL goalie. So, is what it is. Maybe Fedotov will surprise us. If he doesn't, oh well. That's kind of what I've got on Fedotov. I was not expecting to record as soon as I finished recording the last episode, but here we are. I'll be back tomorrow. We'll be talking about the prospect game, the final prospect game that happens in like 6 hours time or whatever. And that should be fun. So we'll talk about that tomorrow. Thank you for listening to this episode. You can find me on Blue Sky at JAKOBFORSTER. You can find the show at LO_Blue Jackets on Twitter. And thank you for listening, for making this hopefully your second listen of the day, if you've already listened to the first episode that went up about an hour and a half ago. But until then, until tomorrow, make sure you stay locked on.